Welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a little bit of an odd one. I'm going to go back into the whole story times of the odd and supernatural stuff that have happened in my life, even before I was born. As I mentioned in the past, in one of my videos, that odd things have always happened to me since I was very little. But one story that my grandmother told me a couple of times that always throws me off was that my great-grandmother foretold my birth when my incubator, my mother, was little. Which is, when she first told me, I was just like, what? It turns out that I'm assuming my mother was probably around 4 or 5 or something. I don't remember exactly her age, but she ended up getting really sick. She was like extremely sick, to the point that they thought she was going to die. The doctors, they took her to the hospital, they said, and the doctors couldn't really do anything. They didn't know what was wrong. They pretty much just told my grandmother, basically to accept the facts that she might die. And my grandmother says that she went home crying uncontrollably. My mother's her firstborn. So she called my great-grandmother, explained the whole situation. Now, my great-grandmother was known for being the person that can pretty much cure anything with herbs and stuff. So she basically told my great-grandmother, my grandmother told my great-grandmother, please do something, please help me with my daughter. And my grandmother says that my great-grandmother told her in the most callous, cold way, maybe it's better that you let her go, because she's only going to bring you a lot of heartache and pain. And to this, my grandmother says that she just blew up. She was just like, how dare you? This is my child. How could you be so cold? How could you say that? And after my grandmother says that, she just went on and on like any parent would do, I'm assuming. My great-grandmother pretty much told her, just wait, and went and got whatever it was that she used and made some concoction and told my grandmother to give it to her, and that everything was going to be fine. And after my grandmother gave my incubator the medication, she did recuperate. And my grandmother says that she went up to her mom and asked her, what made you change your mind? And her reply is, she's going to bring you a lot of heartache, she's going to bring you a lot of pain, but she's going to give you a wonderful gift, a gift that's going to take care of you. That's me. So my grandmother didn't know what to make of that at all. Excuse me. My grandmother had no clue where that was coming from till many years later, when I was born. And then my incubator left me with my grandmother when I was 2. Didn't see her again or heard from her for many, many years. And when she did come back into my life, it was just hell. It was, oh. So, rush over that really quick. I haven't spoken to her in many years. She doesn't refer to me as her son. She refers to me as that man. So, it's no hair off my derriere, because my mother is my grandmother. She's the woman that loved me, raised me, and took care of me. And now I'm taking care of her. Another thing that I used to scare my family with a whole lot, if you remember from the last story, of my supernatural experiences. I mentioned that the house where we lived in had like the courtyard with like the lemon trees, banana trees, and similar to the yucca tree, um, and a lot of ferns all over the place, ferns everywhere. And then let's say the walkway here, the kitchen, and then right in front was where all the plants were in the courtyard. And then you would go around. There was a little pathway, and then stairs would start. And you could go up to the terrace. Now the terrace, there were two entrances from the inside the house, and from the courtyard. So at night, it became sort of like a tradition of sorts, where my grandparents and I would go up there, and sometimes my aunts and uncles would join us, but it was always the three of us. They would sit in the rocking chairs, and I would sit in either of their laps. And my grandmother would always tell me, just look at the stars and tell me the stories of the stars. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun. And I remember once there was a shooting star. And my first reply was, I came in one of those. That freaked them out completely. Completely freaked them out. I was like, yeah, I came in one of those. And my grandmother's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I remember being in this completely white room, and there was a sort of table without legs. And I remember there was a little hole, which I'm assuming now was more like a porthole. And I told her that I remember looking out that hole into complete darkness and a couple of like stars and what seemed to be big balloons floating in this darkness. And as we were coming by the moon, oh, you gotta excuse that. They're doing the gardening and maintenance outside, so I believe the leaf blower is going. But they ended up, as we're coming from the other side of the moon towards here, I saw two monsters that were fighting each other, and they were not paying attention. And then they realized that I was watching, and they both stopped and just stared at me, and I got scared, and I ended up hiding underneath this table. Then somebody came, knocked, and what they said was, it's time for you to be born. And the funny thing is that till this day, I have the mental picture of the room I was in. And it wasn't really a porthole, because portholes are round. This was more oval. And I remember telling them this, and I remember them getting quiet. And they didn't mention anything of it at all. And it wasn't until like a couple of nights later that they asked me to tell them that story again. And I told them the story. And they again went quiet. And this time my aunt was there, I believe. No, it wasn't my aunt. It was one of my uncles. And I remember looking around at all of them, and they were just staring at me. I'm just like wondering, what did I do? What did I say? What's going on? I have no idea. So yeah, left it at that. The years went by, and it wasn't until I was probably, I want to say, let me see. I had already gone to Hawaii by then the first time. So I was in junior high. I was probably 13. 12 or 13. And then my grandmother, out of the blue, she's like, do you remember the story that you used to tell us on how you came here? And I'm like, yeah, the white room. She's like, yes. And then it dawned on me their reaction. So I asked, and I'm like, why did you react the way you did? Why? I don't understand where all of this came from. And she got quiet and she said that about 9.5 months to 10 months before I was born, that there had been this huge white light. It turned at midnight, and it turned the night into day, and it just traveled the sky and disappeared on the horizon. Yeah, and then once it disappeared, everybody was shocked that they had seen this light. Everybody was freaking out that they had actually, well, they weren't sure what they had seen. And 9.5 to 10 months later, I was born. The funny thing is that it took, I was born 9.5, I was 2 weeks late. And my joke is, it took me 9.5 months to figure out how to get out of there without going through the vajayjay. Because, and I figured it out, C-section. So yeah, stuff like that is something that followed me throughout like my whole life. And but the thing is, like, it's not just me, it's been throughout like my whole family. My grandmother and her sister tell of a story of something that happened to my great grandfather, their father, when they were young, because he was a teacher. Then he became a director of, I guess what you would call juvie. But it was more, it was sort of like, they had the dorms and school and everything there. And they said that as he was walking from, this is when he was a teacher still. They lived up in this town, and he taught in a different town, and they just walked back and forth, and he had to go through these woods, and they would turn into a plantation, coffee bean plantation and stuff like that. And as he was walking, they say that he ended up feeling this presence, and they say he always walked around with a dagger. The dagger was basically like a basic dagger in the shape of a cross type, and then the point going down. And they said that he came across this sort of like black rooster, and it felt like it was pulling him, attracting him. So he says that he took out the dagger and he started following this rooster. And they said that as soon as he would get close, the rooster would disappear and then reappear further away. So this kept on going on. And then they said that he came to a cliff. And, oh God, I hope I remember this one correctly. Came to a cliff, and the rooster reappeared on the other side of that cliff. So what he says is he grabbed his dagger, and because he was extremely Catholic, he said his prayers and a couple of rosaries or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what. And he threw the dagger at this black rooster. And as soon as he did that, it's sort of like whatever was drawing him to follow this creature sort of broke. And as soon as that happened, when they said that, he told them that the rooster just laughed, but it was like a human laugh. So that happened with him. They said that he came home really scared, and but odd things like that happen with him a lot. And then also with my grandmother, where she said that there was this lady that would always ask to take my grandmother with her to keep her company when she did her jobs or her chores. And my great grandmother would let her go when she was little. And one day was they were walking through a similar road. She says that they always, when she would go with them, they would always walk by this one big tree that had like a rope swing. And this one particular time, she says that there was this little girl swaying on the swing. And she says she remembers her vividly that she had a really pretty white flowy dress. And she just stood staring at the little girl. And the little girl kept on beckoning her. And the lady who had apparently walked ahead stopped, turned around, and she's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I want to play with the little girl on the swing." And she says that the lady looked up, looked around, and didn't see anybody. Just saw the empty swing. So what this lady did is just grabbed her by the arm and took her back home. And that she wasn't allowed to go with this lady again because she had to walk by that area. And she had quite a few experiences like that also, where a dog talked to her once, and that scared her beyond belief. And I mean, a lot of weird stuff happens in my family. As I mentioned in the other video, one of my aunts ended up, one of their older brothers, also a teacher. There were a lot of teachers in my family. They were actually, he had gotten a commission as a teacher in a faraway little town, more of a village, and it came with a home. And basically, nobody had told them that there was this I guess urban legend or stories of stuff that happened in that house, the previous original owners of the home, what had happened to them, and all the people that have lived there since. So he came home with his wife, and they were talking about how scared they were because weird things always happen in the house. And my grandma's sister was known for having an extremely foul mouth, very witty mouth, a mouth that, basically you couldn't, in an argument, she would win. No matter who. So they decided to take her along because they had heard that you could actually argue down certain entities if you're not afraid of them. Now, this is the watered down version. That night, the first night that they stayed there, things were happening, their usual stuff, things flying out of shelves, and then all of a sudden they started hearing noises. They started hearing a lot of hooves. The hooves kept on like on the roof and on the outside. And basically what my grandma's sister did was sit there and yell back at these in the most foul language ever. And that went on for hours. For hours. They said that, dawn came, but by dawn, everything had already stopped. She just kept on throwing her curses at them, even though everything that was done. And as, the morning came, they said that the villagers came by and they were shocked. And when they asked them, why are you shocked? They're like, we didn't think the house was going to be standing. And they asked them why, was because the house had been engulfed in flames. They saw it from a distance, and they saw the silhouettes of creatures running around in a circle as if they were dancing around a bonfire. this kind of like freaked like my uncle, his wife, and my grandma. Well, uncle, great uncle, and my grandma's sister. And when they explained what had happened, that's when they learned that apparently years and years and years prior, there had been three sisters that had lived there, and they had been killed because they were known to be witches who worshipped the devil. So yeah, stuff like this, like I said, runs through my family quite a lot. And like the shadow people, I see quite a few of them. They don't bother me. The one I want to see is the shadow guy with the hat. So many people talk about him, and I have never seen him. I've seen everything else, like shadow people, shadow animals, but I've never seen that guy with a hat. And I'm curious. I want to know who or what it is. Maybe someday. The worst is in the hospitals, though. Oh, I hate going to the hospital. That's one of the reasons why I hate hospitals. Because there's so many shadow people there. It's like, oh, I don't like that. Ugh. But that's also one of the reasons why, like, when my grandmother was in the hospital, every time she's been in the hospital, I asked to spend the night. Because I don't like leaving her alone there. So, yeah. But, well, I guess that's it. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's definitely different. So, I guess we'll talk some other time. Take care. Ciao.